You awaken before the first light of dawn, when the rooster's call breaks the silence of the village. The hut around you is dim, the air heavy with the smell of smoke from last night's dying fire. You stir beneath a blanket of coarse wool, scratchy against your skin, and feel the faint chill of the early morning. It is not yet bright outside, but in your world there is no time to wait for the sun. The day begins when the cock crows, and work waits for no one. You rise slowly, careful not to disturb the others who still shift in the straw nearby. Your family sleeps in the same single room, pressed close together for warmth through the night. A child murmurs, softly, turning over, and you hear the faint shuffle of a pig in the corner pen.
Animals and humans share the same space, not because it is comfortable, but because the warmth of a body, whether cow, sheep, or person, is too precious to waste.
The hut is not a home of luxury. It is a shelter, built of wattle and daub, patched with whatever you can find, its roof thatched with straw. You are thankful it has not leaked in the last rain. Outside, the village is still wrapped in darkness. The air is damp, carrying the earthy smell of fields and dung heaps. You know the pathways by memory, every rut in the dirt, every stone you must avoid. In these hours before sunrise, you step carefully, because the world is quiet and every sound feels larger. Dogs may stir, the geese may call, and already your mind drifts toward the long list of tasks that await you. But before the work comes the preparation. You reach for the embers left from last night's fire, blowing gently on them until they glow. With a handful of dry straw, you coax a flame into life, a fragile light against the heavy darkness. The smoke curls upward, escaping through a hole in the roof. It stings your eyes, but you are used to it. The hut always smells of smoke. It clings to your hair, your clothes, and your skin, but it is the scent of life, for without fire there is no warmth, no food, no light. In the dim glow, you reach for the simplest of meals, a piece of coarse bread, baked days ago, still hard but edible. Perhaps you dip it in a little ale, weak and watery, brewed at home, because water is not always safe to drink. There is no feast waiting for you, no meat, no abundance. The morning meal is fuel, nothing more. Chew slowly, your teeth meeting the rough grain, the bread heavy in your stomach, but it is enough to keep you moving until the fields. As you eat, you listen. The hut creaks, the animals shuffle, the rooster crows again. You know that your neighbors are stirring, too, rising just as you are. The village is bound together in rhythm. When one rises, soon all will rise. No one may sleep long when work calls. There are oxen to be yoked, fields to be tended, and duties to the Lord waiting before your own. You take a moment, though brief, to look at the faint glow on the horizon. The sky begins to lighten, the stars fading, the day approaching with its endless demands. For a breath, you let yourself feel the cool air, the silence of the village still unbroken by voices, the promise of a day not yet begun.
It is a small peace, fragile, quickly lost when the first tools are lifted and the first calls of labor echo through the fields.
Your body is tired even before the day begins. But this is the rhythm of peasant life. Work begins not when you wish it to, but when nature demands it. You rise, not for yourself, but for survival. And so, with bread eaten and fire faintly glowing, you step into the dim morning, ready to bend your back to the soil once again. You step back into the hut and let your eyes adjust to the dim glow of firelight. This is your home, though to call it comfortable would be a kindness. It is small, low, and smoky. The walls are made of wattle and daub, woven sticks plastered with mud and clay, patched in places where last winter's winds tore holes. The thatched roof above you is thick with straw, layered to keep out the rain, but you know how easily it leaks when storms press too heavily. Sometimes, when the snow melts, drops will fall onto your bedding, soaking into the straw on the floor. Yet still, you are grateful for walls, for a roof, for something that keeps the biting winds outside. Inside, the space is crowded. There is no division between rooms, no privacy, no chambers. The family sleeps close together on the same straw bedding, piled in a corner of the hut. Children lie beside parents, babies beside the elderly, because warmth is precious and must be shared. You know the feel of another body pressed against you in sleep, the comfort of hearing steady breathing, and the unease when that breathing falters in sickness. The smoke fills the hut constantly. There is no chimney, only a small hole in the roof where the grey tendrils escape. The fire is kept low, just enough to warm and to cook, yet the smoke hangs in the air, stinging your eyes, scratching your throat. You cough, quietly, as you stir the embers. Your clothes, your hair, even your skin are marked with its scent. It is not a choice, but a condition of life. In the corner, the animals stir. A pig grunts softly, shifting in its pen, and a pair of chickens scratch at the dirt floor. Sometimes a goat is brought inside as well, or a lamb in winter, when the frost is harsh and the cold can kill. Their warmth, their presence, is as valuable as any blanket.
But with them comes noise and smell, and the reminder that life is always shared here, between human and beast, in one space, bound together by necessity.
Your eyes wander over the hut, and its few possessions. A wooden stool sits near the fire, rough, hewn and unsteady. A clay pot rests beside it, blackened from years of smoke, used again and again for porridge, soup, or ale. Against the wall, a chest holds what little is precious, a few tools, a patch of cloth, perhaps a small keepsake. There is no abundance, no luxury, only what can be carried, mended, or reused until it falls apart. The floor is earth, hard and uneven beneath your feet. Straw is scattered across it to soften the steps and absorb dampness, but it is never truly clean. You sweep it with bundles of twigs, brushing aside dust, but each day it returns. Dirt clings to everything, your clothes, your hands, your hair. It is part of you as much as breath or blood. In the dim firelight, you see the faces of your family as they begin to stir. A child rubs their eyes, hair tangled, cheeks pink with sleep. Another coughs softly, pulling a ragged blanket over their shoulders. You move carefully among them, stepping over the small forms, making room for the day to begin. Life here is lived together, without space, without distance. You share breath, warmth, and struggle in this narrow hut. And yet, despite the smoke, the damp, and the closeness, there is safety in these walls. Outside, the world is wide and unforgiving. Here, inside, you know the rhythm of life, the sounds of those you love, the comfort of a fire that has burned since the night before. The hut may be poor, but it is yours.
It is where you return when the fields are done, when the burdens of the Lord are paid, when the taxes and tithes have taken their share.
It is your shelter, your refuge, your world. Breathe deeply, letting the warmth of the fire touch your skin. The crackle of the embers fill your ears. You glance once more at the animals in their corner, the children stirring in the straw, the rough walls of wattle and daub holding back the morning chill. This is life, simple and harsh, but also steady and familiar. The hut of wattle and smoke may be small, but it contains everything that matters to you. In its crowded space lies your family, your warmth, and the fragile thread of survival that carries you into each new day. The hut is awake now. The fire has been coaxed back into a gentle flame, and the children blink in the smoky light. You reach for the morning's meal, not a feast, not a spread of meats and fruits, but the simplest food, just enough to carry you through the hours ahead. On a rough wooden table, or sometimes on the very floor itself, lies a coarse loaf of bread. It is dark and heavy, baked from rye or barley rather than the fine white flour of lords and merchants. The crust is hard, the inside dense, and each bite reminds you of the field from which it grew. You break a piece carefully, passing it to your children, then take one for yourself. The bread is dry, and you dip it into a small cup of weak ale to soften it, sipping as you chew. Water is rarely trusted, stagnant and often unclean, so ale is the drink of every meal, brewed thin, safe and mild enough for even children to drink. If you are fortunate, there is a little porridge too, boiled from oats or barley, simmered slowly in a clay pot over the fire. It is plain, without spice or sweetness, but it warms the belly in the chill of dawn. Sometimes you flavor it with a pinch of salt, if salt has not grown too dear at market. Sometimes, on the luckiest mornings, there is a spoonful of honey or a handful of berries gathered from the hedgerows in summer. But most mornings are plain. Rain, water, and patience. Cheese, if present, is a treasure. It is hard, salted, made to last through weeks, and every crumb is precious. Cut it carefully, sparingly, handing a sliver to each mouth. An onion, perhaps, sliced thin, its sharp taste filling the air. A clove of garlic, rubbed against bread for flavor. These are luxuries within reach, gathered from garden plots or traded at the village edge. Meat is absent. In your life, meat is a rarity, saved for feast days, weddings, or the rare slaughter of an animal too old to work. Eggs, sometimes, brighten the morning, but more often they are kept to hatch chicks. Milk, if you have a goat or cow, is thin, often turned into butter or cheese to last longer. Each choice is measured, each morsel counted, because every mouth must be fed, and every scrap saved may mean survival in the weeks ahead. You sit together on low stools or on the strewn floor, the family close, sharing what little you have. The children eat quickly, hungrily, wiping bread crumbs from their chins, their small bellies filled just enough to keep them steady until midday.
You chew more slowly, stretching each bite, thinking of the fields that await, of the oxen that must be led, of the Lord's demands that will come before your own.
But smells of smoke, of warm grain, of damp wool and earth. Outside, the rooster crows again, louder now, joined by others across the village. The sounds of life stir beyond your walls, the bark of a dog, the bleat of a goat, the murmur of neighbors also breaking their fast. The village is waking as one, each family sharing the same simple meal, each bound to the same unending cycle of hunger and work. When the bread is gone, and the ale cup is empty, you wipe your hands on your tunic and rise. The children lick the last porridge from the pot, their faces smeared with grain, and you smile faintly, though your mind already turns toward labor. The meal has ended almost as soon as it began, not because you lingered too little, but because there was little enough to eat. You look at the table, ere again, waiting for the next meal that will come after hours of toil. You feel the bread sitting heavy in your stomach, enough to move your body, but never enough to satisfy. It is not fullness you live with, but survival, a steady line between hunger and endurance. And so, you gather your cloak, lift your tools, and step toward the door. The morning meal is done. Outside, the fields wait. You step outside into the pale light of dawn, the village slowly coming alive around you. The air is damp with dew, the grass wet beneath your worn boots. A thin mist lingers over the fields beyond, a soft veil that hides the endless rows of earth you know by heart. Your tools rest heavy in your hands, not just wood and iron, but symbols of the labor that binds you. The land you walk toward is not yours. The soil beneath your feet belongs to the Lord of the manor, as does nearly every furrow and pasture you will touch today. The hut you sleep in, the garden you plant behind it, even the right to gather firewood from the forest, will exist only because of his permission. Each season, you are reminded that your life is tied to his fields, his demands, his law. Your family depends on the strips of land you till, narrow and scattered across the open fields, but before you may tend them, you must serve him. Obligation comes first. You owe him labor, days spent on his fields, planting and harvesting crops you may never taste. You owe him rent, in coin if you have it, in grain or eggs if you do not. You owe him loyalty, enforced not by choice, but by centuries of custom. The rhythm of obligation is relentless. Some weeks you are called to plough his land, turning the soil with oxen that strain under the weight. Other weeks you are told to mend fences, repair roads, or haul timber from the woods. In harvest time, you gather his grain before your own, knowing that if the weather turns or your strength falters, your family may be left with too little. As you walk, you see others gathering, neighbors carrying tools, women balancing baskets, children trailing behind with small bundles of wood. All are bound by the same duties, moving silently toward the Lord's demesne, the land reserved for his profit. The silence is not from reluctance alone, but from weariness. Words are wasted when the body knows the day will be long. The fields stretch ahead, divided by strips, each marked and measured, each claimed by duty. The soil is dark and damp, turned over by plough and hoof, waiting for seed or ready for harvest. You take your place, bending to the task. The hoe meets the earth, the plough cuts deep, and the rhythm of labor begins. You feel the strain in your shoulders, the pull in your back, the ache in your hands. The sun rises higher, warming your face, but you know the warmth is not for comfort. It means only that the day has truly begun, and hours stretch before you, uncounted, demanding. Your stomach already reminds you that the morning's bread was not enough, but there is no stopping, no pause, until the Lord's share is secured. You think of your own strip of land, waiting still, weeds creeping where wheat should be. You think of your children, too young yet to understand why your first duty is not to them, but to another. You think of the tithe you will owe the church, taken from what little is left, and the hope that perhaps this year the harvest will be kind. Around you, the village labors as one. The sound of oxen lowing, the scrape of iron through soil, the murmur of voices too tired to rise above a whisper. A child runs along the edge of the field, chasing crows that threaten to steal seed, their shouts sharp against the steady rhythm of work. An old man coughs, leaning on his hoe, his breath ragged, but his hands still moving. There is no rest, no reprieve. Each body is needed, each hour owed, and yet, even within the burden, there is a strange sense of order. The land gives because it is worked. The village survives because each fulfills their part.
You may resent the weight of the Lord's demands, but without his manner, without his protection, you know the dangers of hunger, theft, and war would be greater still.
Obligation is a chain, but it is also the thread that ties you to survival. As the day stretches, you look once more at the horizon. Beyond the Lord's fields lies your own, waiting patiently, reminding you that your duty is double. But to him, then to yourself. The sun climbs higher, the soil grows warmer, and your body bends lower with each hour. This is the rhythm of your life, to serve, to endure, to return again tomorrow. The fields bound by obligation are not kind, nor fair, but they are the ground beneath your feet, the soil beneath your hands, the reality of your peasant life. You pause for a moment in the field, resting your hands against the rough handle of your hoe. The tools you carry are simple, worn smooth from years of labor, yet they are your companions as much as your burdens. They are made not for comfort, but for necessity, and every mark upon them tells the story of work and survival. In your hand is the hoe, its wooden shaft polished by sweat, its iron blade darkened from countless strikes against the earth. With it, you break the clods, cut the weeds, and shape the furrows.
The edge is not sharp, iron is costly, and a blacksmith's time is dear, but it is strong enough to scrape and dig, to coax reluctant soil into order.
You know its weight, as you know your own breath, each swing echoing the rhythm of your body. Beside you lies the plough, heavier still, its frame carved from oak, its point bound with iron. 2 oxen strain against the yoke, their breath steaming in the cool morning air, their hooves pressing deep into the damp soil. You guide them slowly, urging them forward, steadying the plough as it cuts a furrow into the earth. The blade resists, snagging against stones hidden beneath the soil, jolting your arms and testing your strength. Yet without it, no seed can be sown, no harvest can grow. You think of the blacksmith in the village, his forge glowing red as he shapes the iron tips that fit your tools. His work is vital, but costly, and you treasure every piece he makes. A broken blade means days of lost labor, and so you patch and repair, binding wood with rope, hammering iron with whatever you have, making each tool last beyond its years.
Other tools rest against the hut wall, a sickle with its curved blade, waiting for harvest, a wooden rake, rough but useful for gathering hay, a simple spade, worn at the edge.
They are not many, not shining, not plentiful, but they are enough. Each one is precious, guarded carefully, handed down from father to son, from one weary hand to another. You know their limits, and you know your own. The hoe blisters your palms, the plough strains your back, the sickle cuts deep if your hand slips. The body carries their marks, scars along your fingers, calluses thick upon your palms. These tools are as much a part of you as your breath and bone, shaping not just the soil but your very flesh. And yet, for all their weight, there is a strange comfort in them. They are familiar, dependable, never changing. The Lord's demands shift, the weather turns, hunger rises and falls, but the tools remain constant. Each day begins with their grip in your hand, and each day ends with their weight resting beside your door. They remind you of what you are, a peasant, tied to the earth, bound by labor, but also sustained by it. As you guide the oxen once more, pressing the plough deeper into the soil, you feel the rhythm return. Step by step, furrow by furrow, the land opens before you. The iron scrapes, the wood creaks, the oxen grunt, and your breath falls into the same slow pace. It is exhausting, but it is also steady, a rhythm as old as the village itself. You glance across the field and see others bent over their tools, each one holding the same wooden shafts, each one bound to the same rhythm. Together, you are an unbroken line of peasants and tools, shaping the land with iron and sweat. No one will sing songs of these tools, no chronicles will praise them, but without them, no village could stand, no manor could thrive. no peasant could live. The tools of wood and iron are harsh. They bruise, they blister, they weary. But they are also your lifeline, your constant companions in the endless work of the fields. You lift them, swing them, guide them, and in return, they give you the chance, only the chance, to survive another year. As the day grows brighter, you notice the smaller figures moving along the edges of the field. They are your children, and the children of your neighbors, already at work though the sun has barely risen. In your world, there is no childhood of idleness, no long years of play. From the moment a child can walk steadily and carry a bundle, they are given tasks. Work is not a burden for later, begins almost as soon as life itself begins. You watch them scatter across the field, sticks in hand, chasing crows that swoop down to steal the newly sown grain. Their voices rise in sharp cries, waving their arms to keep the birds at bay. The task may seem small, but it is vital. Every stolen seed is a mouth unfed in the winter. Every grain carried off by a crow is a day of hunger made longer. So the children run and shout, their laughter mingling with the urgency of their duty. Others bend low, picking stones from the soil, carrying them in small baskets to the edges of the field where they will be piled into walls or left in heaps.
Their backs ache quickly, their hands raw from the sharp edges, but they continue, because every pebble removed makes the plough run smoother, the harvest grow stronger.
At the well, a child balances a clay jug, struggling with the weight of water that sloshes and spills over their tunic. Water must be carried again and again, not just for people, but for animals, for cooking, for mixing with the grain. You see them stumble, nearly falling, and then steady themselves, determination set in their small face. There is no choice but to continue, for everyone depends on that jug making its way back to the hut. The youngest help in simpler ways. They gather sticks for the fire, their small hands searching along hedges and paths for fallen branches. They watch the geese or goats, keeping them from wandering into fields they should not enter. They sit beside younger siblings, rocking them when they cry, learning care and patience before they can even speak many words. You remember your own childhood. If you allow your mind to drift back, you remember the cold mornings, the heavy jugs, the endless fields. You remember wishing to be older, to be strong enough to guide the plough, never realizing that strength only brings heavier burdens. Childhood here is short, a fleeting time of play snatched between tasks, a few moments of chasing one another through the village or listening to stories by the fire. The children do not complain. They know no other life. The fields, the animals, the tools, all are as natural to them as breathing. The laughter is rare, but when it comes, it is bright, echoing across the fields and lifting the hearts of those who bend beneath heavier loads. For a moment, the village seems lighter, the work less endless. Yet you also know the dangers that shadow their days. A child may fall into a well, or be trampled by an ox, or grow sick from cold and hunger. Too many parents have buried children before they could see adulthood. Too many mothers have rocked still bodies in their arms. Each child who runs across the fields is precious, fragile, and never guaranteed. You glance again at your own, their hair tangled, their tunics patched and worn, their small feet bare against the earth. You feel both pride and worry. Pride, because they work beside you, learning resilience, learning survival. Worry, because their lives will be as yours, bound to the same soil, the same obligations, the same hardships. Still, when you see them pause, crouching in the grass to share a crust of bread or chase a butterfly for a fleeting moment, you allow yourself to smile. These moments are rare, but they matter. Even in the harshest life, childhood finds its way through, like a flower blooming between stones. As the day stretches, their cries against the crows grow hoarse, their baskets grow heavier, their steps slower. Yet they continue, because they must.
When the sun lowers again, they will return with you to the hut, tired but alive, knowing that tomorrow will bring the same tasks again.
Children at work are not separate from the rhythm of peasant life. They are woven into it, as necessary as the oxen, as constant as the tools. They carry the burdens of the future before they even know the weight of the present. And in their small hands, the survival of the household rests. By the time the sun climbs high overhead, your body is already heavy with weariness. The fields stretch endlessly, and the rhythm of the hoe, the plough, and the rake has left your muscles aching. Sweat dampens your tunic, dust clings to your skin, and your back bends as though it belongs to the soil itself. You are not alone. Every figure around you, neighbor and kin alike, moves with the same slow weight, their faces set with the same quiet endurance. It is midday, and for a brief moment, work is paused. The oxen are unyoked and left to graze at the field's edge, their heads lowering into the grass. The tools rest where they were dropped, leaning against the earth, their handles dark with sweat. Lower yourself onto a patch of ground, grateful for stillness, even if the ground is rough and the air hot. From a cloth bundle, you draw your meal.
It is not generous, but it is something: coarse bread, hard from baking days ago, a small hunk of cheese if fortune has favored you, perhaps an onion or a piece of salted fish.
You break the bread carefully, chewing slowly, letting each bite stretch farther than it should. Your teeth meet the hardness of grain, the sour tang of onion, the sharp salt of cheese. Every flavor is stronger when food is scarce, every bite precious when it must carry you until the evening. A jug of ale is passed from hand to hand, thin and warm in the heat of the day. You drink sparingly, feeling the liquid wash the dust from your throat, knowing there is little enough to last the afternoon. Water might be drawn from a nearby stream, but you do not trust it fully. Often it carries sickness, unseen and merciless. The ale is safer, even when it tastes sour, even when it leaves little comfort. Children gather near their parents, eating with eager mouths, crumbs falling into the dirt. Their laughter is faint but present, a brief brightness against the quiet fatigue. Some lie back in the grass, eyes half closed, their small bodies stretching after a morning of running and chasing birds. Their play is not separate from their work, it is woven into it, just as their lives are woven into yours. Around you, the field is filled with low voices. Neighbors speak in hushed tones, sharing small news, the sickness of a cow, the birth of a child, the rumor of higher taxes. These conversations are as old as the soil, whispered between bites of bread, carried on the wind. You listen, nodding, sometimes answering, but mostly you let the words wash over you like the rustle of leaves. The midday pause is too short to waste in talk. It is for eating, breathing, and remembering that you are more than a body bent over the land. You lie back for a moment, eyes closing against the sun.
The warmth spreads across your face, the earth presses firm beneath you, and the sounds of the village drift softly in the distance: the bark of a dog, the cry of a child, the creak of a cart. For these few moments, the burden lifts. The fields still wait, the Lord still demands, hunger still threatens, but for now there is only stillness. And then, as always, the moment ends. The bread is gone, the jug is empty, the oxen have grazed enough. You rise again, your back stiff, your legs heavy, your stomach not full but quiet enough to move. Tools are gathered, voices fade, and the rhythm begins again. The sun has not yet lowered, and the fields require more than half a day's work still. The midday meal is not meant for comfort. It is not meant to satisfy or to nourish fully. It is meant only to keep you standing, to give your body just enough strength to endure until evening. Hunger lingers still, but survival is not measured by fullness. It is measured by the ability to rise, to bend again, to work until the day is done. And so you do. You rise from the ground, brush the dust from your hands, and walk back into the furrows. The fields stretch on, and you walk into them once more, bound by necessity, driven by hunger, sustained by little more than bread, cheese, and will. As the afternoon wears on, you bend again to the soil, but in your thoughts another weight presses harder than the plough. The earth is heavy, yes, but heavier still is the knowledge that much of what you grow will never pass your lips. It will be carried away, claimed by those who stand above you in station, power, and law. When the harvest comes, you know the pattern well. The lord of the manor claims his share first, a portion of grain, eggs, poultry, sometimes even a young pig. It is not yours to keep, no matter the hours you bent in the sun, no matter the hunger waiting in your hut. Is owed, as it has always been owed, an obligation older than memory. The steward arrives with tally stick in hand, marking what you bring, weighing each sheaf of grain, counting each egg. He notes it carefully, for the manor must keep record. If you come short, excuses will not serve. The field may have failed, the weather may have betrayed you, but still the dues must be met. If you cannot pay in grain, then you pay in labor. Days of extra work on the Lord's land, days stolen from your own, until the debt is cleared or until it grows too large to ever clear. And beyond the Lord waits another hand, the church. The tithe is sacred, they say. 1/10 of all you harvest.
given to God through his servants. Wheat, barley, beans, honey, wool, all measured and taken to the tithe barn. You walk there with your neighbors, each carrying baskets or sacks, each one watching closely, silently, as the steward of the church measures what is owed. A tenth may not sound great, but when your fields are poor, when your stomach is never full, that tenth feels like the difference between life and hunger. The priest tells you it is for your soul, for the poor, for the keeping of the parish. You do not argue. To argue would be dangerous. To refuse would be unthinkable. And so you give, watching your own stores dwindle, hoping the blessing he offers in return will be enough to carry you through the lean months. Sometimes, if you are clever, you hide a sack of grain, bury a few sheaves in the thatch, conceal eggs beneath straw. Sometimes you trade quietly with a neighbor, away from the eyes of the steward. But always there is risk. If caught, the punishment is harsh, the shame heavier than hunger. You think of your children when you hand over the Lord's portion, when you lay down the church tenth. You think of their thin arms, their tired eyes, their small bellies that never quite feel full. And still, you give. For what choice do you have? The land is not yours, the church is not yours, even your own body feels less yours than theirs. Yet within this burden, there is also a strange order. You know what is expected. You know what must be given. It is the same each year, the same for every household. The unfairness is constant, but in its constancy there is a kind of rhythm, a pattern that makes survival, if not easier, least predictable. Still, as you gather your tools and look toward the small strip of land that remains for your family, you feel the weight of every tax, every tithe, every demand. The Lord, the church, the hunger in your own hut, they all wait for their share. And you, bent and weary, must find a way to provide. The sun lowers, the shadows stretch, and you return to your work, knowing that when harvest comes, much will be taken before you taste even a crumb. Such is the life of a peasant, bound not only to the soil, but to the hands that claim its fruits. When the days grow shorter and the fields turn cold, your thoughts no longer dwell on the plough or the hoe. Instead, they turn to the stores. The winter is coming, and with it the long months of darkness and hunger. The harvest is behind you now, but survival is still uncertain. What you gathered in autumn must be stretched to last until spring, and always you wonder if it will be enough. You walk into the small storehouse beside your hut, or sometimes only a corner of the hut itself where sacks and baskets are piled. Grain is stored in rough wooden bins, beans and peas in clay jars, dried herbs hung from beams overhead. Meat, if you are fortunate, has been salted or smoked, its scent sharp in the air. A side of bacon hangs dark and dry, a prize to be guarded jealously, to be cut in slivers across the long season. Cheese wheels, hard and cracked, sit on shelves, waiting to be rationed with care. Every item here is precious. Every sack of grain is counted. Every jar weighed. You run your hands across them, feeling the small comfort they give, yet also the gnawing fear. Because no matter how much you gather, winter always asks for more. The cold months are merciless, and food vanishes faster than you expect.
A hungry child eats more, a sick family member requires broth, a rat finds its way into a sack, and suddenly what seemed enough becomes too little.
You remember winters past, the thin faces of neighbors, the hollow sound of an empty pot. You remember sharing what little you had, or refusing when you could not spare it. You remember the funerals too, the graves dug in frozen ground. Hunger does not kill quickly, it lingers, it weakens, it takes slowly until the body gives up. The fear of that memory sits heavy in your chest. Each evening, you return to the stores, checking again, measuring again, though nothing has changed since morning. It is a ritual, part comfort, part torment. You dole out rations carefully, never too much, never enough to feel full. A bowl of thin pottage, bread broken into pieces, a scrap of bacon cut small. The food fills the pot more than the stomach, yet you learn to live with emptiness. Hunger is not a stranger, it is a companion. The children ask for more, their wide eyes shining in the dim firelight, and you give what you can. Sometimes you trade with a neighbor, offering wool or labor for a jar of beans, a handful of flour. Sometimes you venture into the woods, seeking acorns, berries, or roots to stretch the pot. Sometimes you thin the stores further, eating the seed grain meant for spring, knowing the danger it carries. At night, when the fire burns low and the wind howls against the thatch, You lie awake listening to the soft breaths of your family. Wonder if they will carry through the winter, if the stores will last. You pray silently, not for riches, not for comfort, but simply for enough. Enough bread, enough beans, enough strength to reach the first shoots of spring. And yet, amidst the fear, there is also resilience. You know the patterns of winter, the tricks to stretch what you have. You know how to flavor pottage with wild herbs, how to preserve even the smallest scraps, how to keep hope alive with stories told by the fire. Your ancestors survived as you do now, and their strength runs in you. Still, the fear is never gone. It lingers in every sack of grain, every empty pot, every long night. Winter is not only a season, it is a test of patience, of endurance, of the will to survive when the world offers little but cold and hunger. And so, each day, you count the stores again. You portion the bread, stir the pot, quiet the children, and wait for spring. The fear never leaves, but neither does the fragile thread of hope that tomorrow, and the next day, and the next, the stores will hold. Despite your careful storing, despite the rationing, there comes a time when the stores run too thin. The sacks are nearly empty, the jars scraped clean, the cheese long gone. Winter has stretched on, harsher than you prayed, and hunger presses into every corner of your hut. You rise in the morning with a hollow belly, the ache already gnawing at your ribs. The children stir restlessly, their cheeks pale, their movements slow. You stir the pot, but there is little to put into it. A handful of oats, boiled thin with water. A shred of onion, soft and fading. The broth simmers, but it is more water than food. When you ladle it out, the bowls are warm in your hands, but the weight is light. Each person sips slowly, hoping to trick the stomach into believing it has been fed. You know the signs well. The fatigue that lingers even after rest. The way the body grows colder, the hands trembling, the eyes losing brightness. You remember how last winter the old man down the lane grew weaker each day, until one morning he did not rise. Hunger does not always roar, it whispers, it drains, it waits, and once it has hold, it rarely lets go. When the hunger grows too sharp, you search for other foods. Roots pulled from the earth, bitter and hard. Acorns, boiled again and again to wash away their poison. The bark of trees, stripped and ground into powder, mixed into bread to make the loaf last longer. These things fill the stomach, but they do not nourish. They are food for survival, not for strength. You think of the seed grain set aside for spring planting. You run your fingers over the small sack, feeling the kernels within. They could fill a pot, ease the ache for a night, silence the children's cries. But if you eat them, spring will come empty, and the fields will grow bare. To take them is to trade tomorrow's hope for today's comfort. You hesitate, weighing hunger against survival, knowing there is no choice that does not wound. Neighbors whisper of worse measures. For families who have boiled the hides of animals for broth, who have eaten grass in desperation, who have prayed over empty bowls and gone to bed with nothing. You hear of children lost, their small graves marked by wooden crosses in frozen ground. These stories are not distant, they are warnings, reminders of how thin the line is between endurance and despair. And yet, even when hunger strikes hardest, you endure. You stretch the pot with water, you chew slowly, you quiet the little ones with stories, distracting them from the ache in their bellies. You tell them of spring, of the green shoots that will soon rise, of the lambs that will bleat in the meadows, of the first fresh loaf baked from new grain. You speak gently, not because you believe it will come soon, but because they need to believe. At night, when the wind rattles the thatch and your stomach groans, you lie awake and listen to the breathing of your family. Some breaths are steady, others shallow. You pray they will all continue until morning.
You pray that the hunger will pass, that the seed grain will remain untouched, that the first warmth of spring will not delay too long.
Hunger is a shadow that never leaves you. It shapes your choices, your fears, your very body. It teaches you patience, but also desperation. It makes each crumb sacred, each mouthful a treasure. And when it presses hardest, it reminds you of how fragile life is and how strong you must be to cling to it. Hunger is heavy, but it rarely comes alone. In the dim, crowded huts of the village, where families sleep close and animals share the air, Illness waits like a silent guest. You know it's a rival well. A cough that lingers, a fever that burns, a child who no longer stirs in the morning light. When one falls sick, the hut feels smaller still. The fire glows, the air thickens with smoke and breath, and you listen to the rasp of lungs through the night. You mix herbs, sage, garlic, a little honey if any remains, and whisper prayers over the pot. Sometimes the herbs soothe, sometimes they do nothing. The priest offers blessings, the wise woman mutters charms, but often the sickness runs its course no matter what hands try to stop it. Winter is the cruelest season for illness. The cold creeps into bones, the damp air feeds the cough, and weak bodies give way. Children are most at risk, their small forms unable to fight long. You have seen mothers cradle their little ones, rocking gently by the fire as if motion could drive the fever away. Sometimes the rocking lasts for hours, sometimes for days, sometimes until the body in their arms grows still. But even in summer, sickness does not sleep. The water carries it, unclean and unseen. Flies gather on food, wounds fester without healing, and a small cut can become a death sentence. In the fields, a man may stumble with heat and never rise again. In the hut, a woman in childbirth may bleed with no remedy, her life fading as swiftly as a candle in wind. The fear is constant, because illness strikes without warning. It passes from hut to hut, one cough echoing into many, one fever spreading across the village. You cannot keep it out. The walls are too thin, the air too shared. You simply endure, hoping it will pass you by, hoping your body will be strong enough when it does not. Think of the healers, the women who gather herbs at the forest edge, who know which leaves soothe, which roots numb pain. Their hands are steady, their knowledge deep, yet even they are helpless when the sickness runs deep. They can ease suffering, but not always grant life. Still, their presence is a comfort, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, someone stands watch, someone tries. There are remedies of faith as well. Candles lit in the church, prayers whispered at the altar, offerings laid before the saints. Some believe illness is punishment, others believe it is simply fate. You bow your head with the rest, for faith gives strength even when the body weakens. Illness humbles you.
It reminds you how thin the line is between life and death, how fragile each day truly is. You may toil from dawn to dusk, you may fill your stores carefully, you may guard every crumb of food, and still, one cough, one fever, one sickness can undo it all.
And yet, life continues. Even as illness sweeps through the village, the fields demand labor, the animals cry for food, the taxes wait to be paid. You work while you worry, bending over the soil with thoughts heavy on those coughing in the hut. You pray silently as you swing the hoe, you hope as you guide the plough, you endure as the sickness runs its course. Sometimes, there is recovery. A fever breaks, a cough fades, a child opens their eyes and smiles once more. These moments feel like miracles, small victories against the darkness. Other times, the illness claims its price and the village gathers in silence to carry a body to the churchyard, laying them beneath the earth with simple prayers. Life and death are close companions here, and each day you walk between them. Illness in the village is not rare, not strange. It is expected, endured, accepted as part of the rhythm of peasant life. But acceptance does not mean ease. Each cough brings fear, each fever brings dread, each loss leaves an emptiness that cannot be filled. Still, you rise the next day, for there is no choice. The land waits, the hut waits, life waits, even when illness lingers in the air. The days of toil are many, the burdens unending, but even in the harsh rhythm of peasant life, there are moments of reprieve. Festivals mark the passing of seasons, small islands of joy in a sea of labor. They do not erase hardship, but for a little while, they soften it. When a holy day approaches, you feel the change in the village. Work slows, tools are set aside, and neighbors speak with lighter voices. The church bells ring longer, calling all to gather, and the people obey. For once, the Lord does not demand labor, for even he bows to the calendar of saints. You put on your cleanest tunic, patched but neat, and walk with your family toward the green where music and laughter will rise. Food is shared more freely on these days. Bread is baked fresh, loaves soft and steaming, their scent filling the air. Ale is brewed stronger, poured into cups that pass from hand to hand. A pig may be slaughtered, its meat roasted and divided among the villagers. Honey cakes, if they can be afforded, bring sweetness rare enough to feel like luxury. You eat more in one day than in many weeks, your stomach full, your heart lighter. There is dancing, too, in the open space. A pipe plays, a drum beats, and feet stamp against the earth. Young men and women laugh as they turn in circles, hands clasped, faces bright. Children chase one another, their voices rising above the music. Even the elders smile, clapping their hands, their eyes shining with memories of their own youth. For a time, the worries of hunger and tax fall away, replaced by rhythm, by laughter, by fleeting joy. Stories are told around the fire, tales of saints and heroes, of dragons and miracles, of love and loss. You listen, your body warm with food and drink, your mind drifting like a child's. These stories are as nourishing as the bread, feeding not the belly but the spirit. They remind you that life is more than survival. It is also song, and laughter, and memory. The church stands at the center of it all, its doors open, candles glowing. You kneel, whispering prayers, giving thanks for the harvest past, asking blessing for the season to come. The priest blesses the crowd, his voice rising above the music, reminding all that joy is holy too. Faith is woven into every dance step, every song, every shared loaf. Yet the festival is fleeting. By evening, the food dwindles, the cups empty, the music slows, the fire burns low, and the laughter fades into tired murmurs. Tomorrow, the fields will call again. Tomorrow, the Lord will demand his due. Tomorrow, the weight of life will return. But for this one day, you have felt lightness. For this one day, you have known fullness. As you walk back to your hut beneath the stars, the children stumble with sleep, their hands sticky from honey, their faces glowing with smiles. You carry them home, your own heart softened, holding onto the warmth of the day. You know it will not last. But that does not matter. The memory of it will carry you through many grey mornings, reminding you that even in a life of burden, joy finds its way through. Festivals do not change the peasant's life, but they colour it. They are the threads of brightness woven into the rough cloth of hardship.
Though fleeting, they are precious, for they remind you that you are not only a worker of fields, you are also a singer, a dancer, a soul capable of joy.
The memory of festivals fades quickly, replaced by the daily rhythm of survival. With it comes the knowledge that not every neighbour is honest, not every villager patient. Hunger drives people to desperate acts, and when food is scarce, theft is never far away. You guard what little you have, for a single stolen loaf may mean a child goes hungry in your hut. At night, you sometimes wake to the sound of footsteps outside or the low bark of a dog warning of movement. You sit up, listening, wondering if someone is creeping close to your store of grain. Rats are not your only fear. Men, too, are drawn to food when their bellies are empty. You keep your stores hidden as best you can, burying sacks, tucking jars beneath straw, locking chests with iron if you are fortunate enough to own one. Still, you know locks are only a small comfort. Desperation finds its way through. And it is not only neighbours you fear. The Lord's forest lies nearby, its trees tall and thick, its game plentiful. Rabbits, deer and boar move through the undergrowth and fallen branches litter the ground. You see them often while working the fields, your body aching, your stomach aching more. The temptation is sharp, a rabbit snared, a deer brought down, a bundle of wood gathered for your fire. Such things could mean warmth, could mean meat on the table, could mean life made easier for a few nights, but the forest is not yours. The game belongs to the Lord, the wood too. To hunt without his leave, to gather without his right, is theft. And theft here is not punished with a fine or a scolding, it is punished harshly. You have seen what happens. Men caught with snares are dragged to the manor court, their heads bowed, their hands trembling. Some are fined beyond their means, left poorer than before. Others are whipped, the sound of leather cracking against flesh ringing in the air. And in darker tales, for greater theft, the punishment is worse, hands cut off, even death. You remember the story, told in whispers, of the man who felled a tree for firewood. He was made an example, beaten before the village, his family shamed, his hut stripped. The lesson was clear, the Lord's rights are not to be touched. Hunger may drive you close, but fear pulls you back. Even within the village, smaller thefts bring danger. A chicken missing from its pen, a loaf gone from the oven, a jug of ale drained before its time. When such things happen, suspicion falls quickly. Eyes narrow, whispers spread, and the guilty, or the merely accused, face harsh words and harsher judgment. Trust is fragile when hunger presses. A thief is not only punished by the steward, but also cast out from neighbors' kindness. And yet, you cannot judge too harshly, for you know what hunger feels like. You know the cry of children in the night, the ache that does not end. When you hear of theft, your heart wavers between anger and pity. For who among you has not thought of it? Even if you never dared, who among you has not stood at the forest's edge, watching a deer move silently, and felt your hand twitch toward a bough you do not have? So, you live carefully. You guard your stores, you respect the Lord's forest, you pray your neighbors will do the same. Always, in the back of your mind, the knowledge lingers, desperation breeds risk, hunger sharpens the edge of temptation. And in this life, the line between survival and punishment is thin, too thin to forget. You work the fields with steady hands, but your eyes often drift toward the tree line, toward the wealth of wood and game you cannot touch. You swallow the urge, you remind yourself of the punishments, of the scars left on those who were caught. You remind yourself that survival does not always come from boldness, but from caution, from endurance, from knowing which risks are too great. Dangers of theft shadow you always, a reminder that in this harsh world, not even hunger excuses the taking of what is not yours. And so, you endure, keeping to your fields, keeping to your hut, guarding what you have and fearing the cost of taking what belongs to another. When winter settles in, the nights feel endless. Darkness comes early, swallowing the village before the evening meal is finished, and it lingers long into the morning hours. Inside your hut, the fire burns low, the air thick with smoke, and the world beyond your walls is silent except for the cry of the wind. You huddle close with your family, all of you pressed together near the hearth. The children curl into the straw, wrapped in rough blankets, their breath white in the cold air. Animals stir in their pens nearby, their warmth adding to your own. The hut creaks under the weight of frost, the thatch brittle, the daubed walls stiff with ice. You feel the cold in your bones, and you know it will not leave until spring. Food is thin by this time. The evening meal is a small pot of pottage, stretched with water, flavored with roots or dried herbs. Bread is cut into narrow slices, each one carefully divided, and every bite chewed slowly to make it last. You drink from a cup of ale, weak but warming, and pass it on. The hunger is not new. It has been with you all winter. But in these long nights, it grows sharper, more insistent, filling the silence with its ache. There is little work to do, outside, and yet your body does not rest. You mend tools by the fire, patch torn clothing with coarse thread, carve wooden spoons or repair baskets. Your hands must remain busy, for idle hands bring worry. You work slowly, the flickering light of the fire casting long shadows, each crackle echoing in the stillness. Stories fill the nights as much as the fire. You tell the children tales of saints and miracles, of knights and dragons, of summers that seem too far away. The old stories bring warmth, not to the body, but to the spirit, reminding you that others before you endured winters as harsh, perhaps harsher. The children listen with wide eyes, their bellies not full but their imaginations fed. When their lids grow heavy, they drift to sleep to the sound of your voice, their dreams carrying them beyond the hunger and cold. The nights are also for prayer. You kneel before the small wooden cross hung near the hearth, whispering words for health, for strength, for the return of spring. You pray for your family, for your neighbors, even for the animals that share your hut. Each life feels fragile in the grip of winter, and faith is one of the few comforts you can offer. Yet fear is never far. You hear the cough of a child, the wheeze of an elder, and you know how easily sickness steals life in these months. You remember winters past, when the long nights ended in mourning, when the church bell rang for neighbors who did not see the thaw. Each cough makes your heart tighten. Each silence makes you listen harder for the breath that should follow. Time loses shape in these nights. You wake and sleep and wake again, but the dark never seems to lift. Hours stretch endlessly, broken only by the tending of the fire, the sharing of a thin meal, the murmurs of prayer. Outside, the wind howls, snow drifts against the door, and the village seems swallowed by silence. You wonder if the world beyond the fields still exists, if spring will ever return, if life will ever feel warm again. And yet, within this harshness, there is also closeness. Family pressed beside you, your neighbors enduring the same long nights, the entire village bound together by survival. You are not alone, even in the darkness. That thought is a comfort greater than the fire. The long winter nights do not pass quickly. They are endured, lived through, one breath at a time, one story at a time, one prayer at a time. And when at last the first light of spring touches the horizon, when the snow melts and the fields soften, you will remember these nights, not only for their hunger and their cold, but for the endurance they demanded and the strength they revealed. The seasons turn, the years pass, and you remain bound to the rhythm of peasant life. Each day begins with toil and ends with weariness. Each year brings hunger, taxes, illness, and fear. Yet through it all, you endure. You rise before dawn, you bend to the plough, you share your hut with smoke and beasts. You eat bread that is coarse, broth that is thin, and you stretch what little you have to feed those you love. Your body aches, your hands harden, your back bends, and still you rise again the next morning. The burden is heavy, but you carry it, because survival allows no other choice. And though life feels harsh, there are moments that soften it. The laughter of children chasing crows from the field, the warmth of a festival day, when music and food are shared freely, the rare sweetness of honey on bread, or the comfort of a full stomach after harvest. Even the smallest joys glow bright against the greyness, like embers that keep the fire alive. You find resilience not in strength alone, but in community. Your neighbors work beside you, suffer beside you, celebrate beside you. When one family falters, another lends a hand. When illness strikes, herbs and prayers are shared. When hunger grows sharp, the village faces it together, bound by a shared fate. Alone, you could not survive. Together, you endure. Faith carries you too. The church bell tolls. The candles flicker. The priest speaks words of hope. Bow your head, you whisper prayers, you cling to the belief that your suffering has meaning, that your endurance is seen, that spring will follow winter as surely as dawn follows night. Your life may not be written in chronicles or carved in stone. Kings and lords will be remembered, their battles recorded, their names preserved. But you, the peasant, the tiller of soil, the bearer of burdens, your story is told in the furrows of the land, in the bread baked from your hands, in the children who live because you endured. As you sit by the hearth at the end of a long day, you feel the ache in your body, but also the quiet pride in your heart. You know the world rests on shoulders like yours, unseen but essential. Without your labor, there would be no manna, no market, no feast for others to enjoy. You are the root from which all else grows. Life's burden is heavy, but resilience is heavier still. It's what keeps you standing in the cold wind, what keeps you working through hunger, what keeps you hoping in the darkest night. It is the thread that ties you to the generations before you, and the gift you pass to the generations after. And so, though your life is harsh, it is also steady. Though it is filled with hardship, it is also filled with meaning. You are a peasant, bound to the soil, shaped by struggle, carried by community, sustained by resilience. The world may not remember your name, but it carries your legacy in every loaf of bread, every field of grain, every life that continues because you endured.